Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TopCyberPro podcast. I'm founder and CEO Jim West. I have a great guest today that we're going to talk about something that's usually not in the world or in the lane of cybersecurity, but it's in a what I would call an adjacent parallel lane that we work together, whether we're integrated with one another or it becomes, it's I guess it's adjacent lanes down the same highway, and it's really about modern systems engineering. And I have one of the top experts in the world with me today, Dr. Alejandro Salado, correct?
That's correct, Jim. Thank you. Thanks for having me here today.
So Dr. Alejandro is got a lot of hats he wears. He's a professor, so he's teaching and molding the future, what we call of modern systems engineering. But he also does a lot of advisory consulting work. Some of the customers that he has advised, and I know we might be able to share some stories on that, but like NASA, Boeing, Tesla, Apple, and the U.S. Army, and I'm sure many others. But particularly in the industries of defense and space. And folks, you're probably if you've not been a stranger on LinkedIn lately, when we talk about the AI race and future emerging tech, we're already talking about concerns about power and usage of power. And now that people are talking about putting data centers in space. So again, we hear about SpaceX and all these other companies that are coming up to help create efficiencies for launching more satellites in space to improving systems in space. And all those systems, when we're talking about going to Mars, the moon, projects with NASA, all of these things have to come down to one bedrock thing and foundational thing, which is engineering. And when it comes to systems engineering, for decades and decades, there's been multiple different, what I would call frameworks and processes that had their own merits. But now we're seeing a new trend in the modern systems engineering. So, Dr. Alejandro, can you kind of give us that high level and that's kind of that 101 of what is modern systems engineering?
That's a really good question, Jim. I think it is probably a mix of aspects, but it is more use of computers to support our work. It is more not just gut feelings and processes and checklists, but really having some evidence-based underpinning theory that guides what we do, right? And it's really probably it's moving the needle more from the art of it to the science of it, right? And there's always going to be a part of art, but the beginning it was a lot of art, then it became into a process-oriented discipline, and now we're moving the needle into science-based discipline, right? So really, modern is intentional. It is strategic thinking. It is using the method that is right for the problem, as opposed to the standard whatever says that in step three I have to do this, right?
Mm.
So there is more thinking underneath that. And then, as I mentioned, there is more methodologies and use of computer models and simulations and techniques that we did not have available to us in the past. So that's the 30-second summary of what a modern systems engineering would be.
Well spoken. One of the things a lot of people, when they think about systems engineering, we usually think of like really smart engineers of NASA and the Apollo 13, which is a famous movie with Tom Hanks, where they had the multiple problems and they had the engineers between the gentleman in the actual space capsule and the people on the ground between Houston and all the other locations in America trying to come together to solve that problem, right? And they were able to identify and find a problem, figure out that electrical sequence to power up all the systems,
Right.
right? But as you said, it was more of an art form because they had to do a lot of trial and error trying to, figure it out. But nowadays, as you mentioned, we have computers in everything we do. I don't think there's a single job on the planet that, or I would say about 80% or more jobs, or 8 out of 10 jobs,
Right.
touches a computer in some way. And
Right.
because of that, we can leverage the power of these computers. And you mentioned simulations, right? I kind of equate it to if people watch the Avengers Endgame movie where Doctor Strange was going through like the 200 million possibilities of how things could end. Well, with computers, we can simulate conditions and we
Right.
can have and raise our assurance that something can either be more resilient or plan a method or and you can start tweaking things, and this becomes important like when you're dealing with like industrial type controls, right? When you're dealing with things that were temperatures that matter, when you go, let's say, 10 plus decimals, or spaces past the decimal, things start to really matter from an engineering perspective. Now, could you take us a little bit deeper about why this approach for modern systems engineering being more evidence based is really the future of systems engineering as opposed to more of like an event based, which has been really popular
Okay.
for decades.
So it's interesting. I'm going to spend some time. What, um, so in the past, and in the last years, I've been by chance, I've looked at some historical records of or historical accounts of the discipline, right? And actually have this book here. This is really by chance that I put it on my
Okay.
desk. Um, it's really interesting. So let me put it there. It's
Ah,
The Secret of Apollo, right? And by, let me see, you see the
Stephen
author there,
Johnson.
Johns Hopkins, right? So university. So it's called The Secret of Apollo. Uh, but I find the book to be more interesting than that. It's really a history of systems engineering. And and then when you look at the very beginning, those days, the super interesting thing to me was that you are seeing the birth of artifacts that we use every day, like an interface control document. They didn't have that at some point, right? And then you see in
Hmm.
this book, well, this general, whoever came to the project, it was a mess, and then he created this ICD, which is something that we take for granted today, right?
Hmm.
And you see configuration control, test planning. I mean, you see many things, right, that we do these days that they didn't exist in the past. And you see that part of history. And this is again the 60s, right?
Hmm.
Then two things happen which are really interesting. The community of practice starts to proceduralize everything. And it's becoming what I said, a checklist.
Hmm.
Milestone A, milestone B for every project. It doesn't matter. And in milestone A, this is your deliverables. And in milestone B, this is your deliverables, right? And that's one size fits all. Now, in parallel, the academic community is doing something different. It's really pushing for the theory of systems, right? So they're really looking into where is the underpinning science, how can we do this? And they do a lot of work. Now, to me, the thing that is, I don't want to say sad, but this happens in technology a lot. The work that they were doing was not ripe for the evolution of the systems because the complexity of the systems increased so rapidly
Yeah.
that the research could not be scalable, right? Like they had these things, but computers couldn't do what they had in mind, or the models would work for something tiny, but not for the full thing. And then that reinforces the proceduralization of the discipline. And then the science dies, basically. And we have a couple of decades where there is no real research in systems engineering. It is only we do the practice, right? Then we get into this model-based systems engineering starting 20 years ago, right? At least, probably a bit more. And we have computers that can do better. We have
Hmm.
models that can do better. We start to have some new interest in the research of systems engineering because the procedures do not work as well as we hope them to work. And there is a new wave of, hey, let's look at methods and look at bring knowledge from other domains that might be useful for systems engineering. And suddenly we are now, it's a rebirth, to be honest, the way I feel it. It's like we are saying like, oh, let's go back and where those researchers were with the technology that we have today and the knowledge that we have today. And then you can see that we are changing. And in the future, it's like, hey, do we really need to have milestones? Why?
Yeah.
Maybe we have a project for which we need more milestones or less milestones, or
Hmm.
maybe even the milestones are not monolithic. I'm just validating information as I have it, and I can play in a way more dynamic
Yes.
feed,
Build
right?
the plane as it's flying.
Exactly, right. So we're doing all those things now. Of course, you are fighting always the manifestos and the checklists, right? And the
Hmm.
like, oh, everyone needs to be agile now, and
Yeah.
really most of the implementation has become proceduralized as opposed to principle based, which is what it's supposed to be. But then we also have research that tells us what aspects of the manifesto work, why, and in what conditions, right? So the evidence based is really about, and this is why I don't say model based. To me, it really goes beyond that, and hopefully it goes beyond that because we're having a similar problem with MBSE model based today, in the sense that it's becoming the means, not the end.
Yeah.
But it is really about saying, well, I know why I am doing this review now in the context of what I need to achieve in the project. I'm not following a guideline just because I need to follow it. And I know that this decision method that I'm using is not adequate because it is flawed mathematically and it doesn't work, so I have to use something else.
Hmm.
Or I know that what I'm talking about, verification, validation, I'm talking about confidence that I have in the system working, right? And then I know that confidence is subjective, so then maybe I have to do. So it's really about uh, moving from the process to understanding what you're doing and why.
Hmm.
And then again, moving into that aspect of the tools help us in to some extent do those things. If I think about when you talked about BAUs, event-based milestones, right, rigid milestones, um, they do make sense a lot, right? So when you have static information, or sorry, information artifacts are sort of static documentation, right? It's really difficult really to be reviewing and adjusting as you create your
Hmm.
process, right? So it makes sense to say, okay, whatever, what's March 19th, let's baseline everything and let's get together and see if we're going in the right direction, right? That makes sense.
Hmm.
But if I can have a continuous data validation, right? And now we have ontologies and I'm changing my model and then it flags a problem, then I don't need maybe to get that together on a given time because there are many things that are just being automatically or validated, checked, and all those things. So I think that's the mix of what the research is telling us and what the technology is affording us to do. That's how the discipline is changing now, slowly, right? We still have
Yes.
milestones, we still have a lot of that going on, but we start to see that there is a different future for how systems engineering is practiced.
Now, with that being said, a lot of folks are entrenched in old thinking, right? And this happens in technology. This happens like when people wanted to go from like the tape medium to CDs to hard drives from floppies. Even nowadays,
Right.
there's some pushback on AI because AI is everywhere, but some folks just don't want to learn it yet, right? Or some folks are a little late to the party, as I'll say, right? They eventually come
Yeah.
around. But with this new methodology and approach to evidence-based systems engineering, a lot of folks are going to go, well, I know DODAF, TOGAF, I got, PCD. There's so many frameworks and processes. I'm going to pull up a chart in a little bit to kind of show some of the ones that I'm an expert in. But the point being is you get a lot of pushback from some folks that, when project management, for example, there was like standard project management, then you have PMIs, PMP, their method and framework, and then you have agile, right? Today, agile, everything seems to be agile. Where
Right.
you may have within an organization, even within a team that's working on a project, different people trying to go a different process. And what I usually try to tell people, like when I'm working on a team with different methodologies and approaches from different folks, right? Because everybody's got their own expertises and experiences, but there's usually a common ground. Like say project management, you can align things to like project management to RMF to like DAU system engineering to even MBSE. I believe everything has a general alignment because at the end of the day, you start with a problem and then you formulate and you build and you eventually implement a solution. But in between, there's a lot of different pathways that things may take. But what I think is the big ace up the sleeve, if I had to say the biggest pro for like MBSE and modern systems engineering, is that evidence based fills perfectly in with things like a RMF, like the NIST risk management framework requires an artifact to prove that some, like you said, a checklist or a security setting has been met to a standard. There's usually a report, a screenshot, or some kind
Right.
of proof that that has been implemented, right? So I do believe that that goes hand in hand with almost any security framework where you do have to run some kind of audit or check. But
Absolutely.
with computers, with everything being interconnected, you can almost do real time scoring of a system. And I think modern evidence-based systems engineering is the future because that is what you're relying really on is that evidence base that can be generated by the computers and systems running and monitoring the system. What is how would you augment that statement or am I going down the wrong path there?
Yeah, no, no, no. I think you're spot on. So I have two thoughts, and hopefully I can remember both. But one of them with security, right? It has to do with, or in general, there is an issue associated with um, companies today, organizations in general, um, because of how the world works these days.
Hmm.
They do not invest in deep knowledge.
Hmm.
Okay. So I remember when I was doing graduate studies in the US, most of my professors, they were retired and they were talking how their companies had funded them for 3 years to do a PhD. And they sent them somewhere and they were being paid, right? But not working for the company. They were learning for 3 years, right? And you're like, really? I mean, did that exist? It's crazy because today you might get 2 days off to do a training.
Yeah.
And if you want to do graduate studies, you do it on the evenings on your own,
Hmm.
right? They may pay for that, but you do it on the evenings. Like, you're not going to pay you for 2 years to be in deep thinking.
Yes.
Um, Now, if you need to accelerate the learning, and generally what you do is, well, if you want to be pragmatic, I'm focusing on the recipe for you to use. And I can give you the recipe, but you do not understand the why. And once you do not understand the why, you are risk averse. And risk averse means, Jim, oh, I've always done it like this. I don't know how to get out of the recipe
Yeah.
because I don't even know why this recipe is good.
Yeah.
Now, you pair that with consulting companies and the traditional consulting companies and the vendors, right? And the evangelization of things and the faith and the overselling. So you take agile, right? And then the company comes and says everything needs to be agile. So now the airplane has to be agile because the other thing is crap. And then you think like, well, it's fantastic, but you cannot do incremental delivery on an airplane. Like you cannot say, hey, United Airlines or American Airlines, here's the two engines. Don't worry, the wings are coming your way. You
Yeah.
can't do that. Now, if you start to understand what it works, you can say, well, maybe I can use a hybrid. And there might be aspects of the project that I can do in that way. And there might be other aspects of the project where I cannot, right? But in order for you to do that, you cannot have faith in a method. You have to understand it is not that agile is better than a more or less dynamic development processes, that they give you different things in different contexts.
Hmm.
And in general, in most projects, you're going to have aspects that are more suited for different developmental methodologies of development. If I go with security, and when you were talking about it, one of the things that came to my mind quickly was I was still in industry. I was not in academia. And it was the time where Google Docs came out,
Hmm.
right? And in the company, we would still do documents, version 1, version 2, version 3, final, slash, super final,
Yeah.
right? And everyone had the document
Version control was a mess.
right? Send the email, all those things, right? We worked in that way. And then the question came, hey, shall we use Google Docs, right? I mean, it looks like it's just a no-brainer, at least at the beginning. And of course, security officers came and said, no, that's not, we cannot do that because information is outside of our server.
Hmm.
And that's a security risk, right? And, and the super interesting thing is that that assessment did not come from any analysis. That judgment came from internal server is more secure. And while we were having that discussion, and again, I'm not a security person, but I remember being engaged in the discussion, and I remember this paper coming out or news piece. I don't remember what it was, but it basically, someone had made an analysis and they said Google Docs security is way higher than almost any internal security any company can have,
Yep.
with the exception of classified environments and all that
Hmm.
stuff, right? But for the regular internal server, they said it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
Google's Docs is way more secure than whatever you have in house, right? And yet the companies didn't even start to think about it because the rule was security means it's inside of my
Hmm.
building. That's
Yeah.
it, right? So yeah, and I feel that an aspect of it has to do um, with the inability or the lack of an incentive these days to push for knowing why.
Hmm.
And then you just resort to the process or the checklist that we have generally. So now with MBSC and all those aspects, that's what we're seeing, right? We see that many of the things that we have to do are just changes in the way people work. Now, there are poor practices that are good practices. So some of the barriers early on were that as you start to use computers and you cannot use a whiteboard, and now you need to model, and depending on your modeling language, is setting restrictions for you.
Hmm.
Then some people are uncomfortable because they would say, well, I cannot use that tool because you see, I want to do this that I have on my whiteboard and I cannot do it on the tool. And then you have to go and tell them, well, but what you have in the whiteboard is wrong. That's why the tool doesn't let you do it, right?
Hmm.
So, so there is a mix of things of risk aversion, lack of knowledge, um, that tells you what to do, lack of knowledge to do properly some
Yes.
of the tasks that because you are not in that more formal environment, you can just go through Scape, right? Because no one is really checking for you. So there is a bunch of stuff, but yeah, but we're moving. I think we just crossed the super barrier point, and now
Mhm.
we're in the opposite scenario. I feel we are in the explosion where everyone is doing crazy things, and there is
Mhm.
a lot of bad things being done in that environment. And the same thing,
But I believe like the most popular tool around MBSE and SysML is Cameo, right? That's probably the most popular commercial tool that.
So I will say two things. There is a lot of mix up of terms here, right? So the
Hmm.
most popular language is SysML.
Hmm.
The most popular tool is Cameo.
Cameo, yeah.
Um, and then people mix the three: MBSE, SysML, Cameo, right?
Hmm.
The So I would say, and then SysML is the most popular tool, but also the modeling language.
Hmm.
Um, and to me, that's really interesting because I started MBSE before SysML became what it is today, right?
Hmm.
And an interesting thing, even early on when I started, was that SysML is a systems modeling language, and it is really powerful to model systems, but it is not a systems engineering language,
Yeah.
which is a different story, right? And that means that I go through some of the training material, or I go through some of the things that the language lets you do, and those are poor systems engineering practices that the language does not enforce. And it doesn't have to, because it is not meant to be the systems engineering language. It is a
Yes.
systems modeling language.
Hmm.
So there are a few things there that a lot of people do not get this, and a lot of tool vendors and consulting companies, either they do not understand or they do not want to disclose it super actively or explicitly, right? And that leads to a situation where it is good because this is finally taking. I mean, it's now it's there. It's not three crazy people like I was in industry doing this in our office. Like this is really uh, accelerating, but at the same time, there is a lot that is bad, and it is wrong. And it is just the nature of we need someone who is able to model. Um, Most systems engineers may not be super ready, so you're just pulling from a group of people that are good at modeling or at software, but they do not really understand systems engineering. And
Yeah.
then things are made that are not fantastic. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
So it's
So,
interesting you bring that up about one's the language, one, and systems engineer is a completely different discipline, right? And so in my career, I got 35 years of experience, and one of the top systems engineering things that I'm an expert on, I actually have a paper out on the internet that the NSA asked me to brief at a conference back in 2017. It's basically the nine security principles by which they do their ISSE process, which is Information Systems Security Engineering. And the basic concept of it, and almost every engineering has this general same concept, they might word it a little differently, is keep your problem space separate from the solution space. It's like the 101, right? And then you start
right,
learning about the different processes and how they build into defense in depth and so on and so forth, where there's some redundancy and continuous monitoring and checks through the process. And so it's driven by certain events as opposed to a time. Well, it is an event when you reach a certain compliancy standard.
right.
But but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I want to stay focused on this modern systems engineering. So you work a lot in the defense and space, and like I said earlier in the podcast, LinkedIn and the news is blowing up with all of these, people putting stuff in space. We got Space Force now, low Earth orbit satellites, and so much stuff that's going in there. And not only just to do the thing that they're out there to do, whether it's a data center in space, doing like geosent information, or et cetera, or communications, but now we have to also worry about the threats against those satellites because obviously people and nation states might want to build things that can knock those systems offline and potentially send them out towards space or send them crashing down to Earth. So this is where security now comes back in, and the evidence base becomes more crucial that we can prove the key word here being the resiliency against attacks or compromise. So can you speak to some of maybe the interesting advice, guidance, or discussions that you might be having with other people in this space about these potential concerns?
So I think honestly, and it might be because of the people I engage with, there is not a lot of talk about security. There is a lot of talk about traffic in
Okay.
space. really, or at least what I've been exposed to. It's like
Hmm.
everyone is doing these thousands of satellites now. We're just packing everything up there. What's going to happen, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's too much, and there is an aspect of security, which is basically when you launch a satellite, you have this probability of collision with another satellite, and then there is the management of the constellation of the satellites to move them around. And traditionally, those were very improbable situations. You still did collision avoidance maneuvers and things like that. But suddenly, I mean, the world has changed. Like,
Hmm.
we're just we're multiplying. It's not that we're adding. It's just
Exponentially.
right. It's just, and there is a lot of talk about how do you do. I mean, what are the new levels of probability of collision? How do you really manage traffic now? Because
Hmm.
before it was reactive, like, oh yeah, well, hey, there's a satellite coming my way. No worries, I'll move my satellite, right? But if you have thousands, you cannot do that. So now some people are doing automated maneuvering. But what if you are just doing maybe one satellite and you cannot do that? And so there is a lot of, at least what I'm exposed to, there is a lot of traffic and what to do after they die
Hmm.
also, right? So once the satellite is no longer useful, what do you do about it? But definitely, I feel we know a little bit about security and jamming and all those things that
Hmm.
happen, right? And there might be some other, I read early concepts of even grabbing a satellite, but I don't know what the situation is today, to be honest. I don't
No
have a lot
worries.
of insight into security concerns, but definitely, I mean, if all your data is up there, well, it's up there, right?
Yeah.
And you are transmitting everything, it can be sniffed at every time, right? So that's for sure. Now, I don't know what the state of the art in cryptography is these days, and
But yeah, we could rest assured that obviously cyber is still a good component in all of this
right, encryption,
technology.
right? I don't know what it is, but for sure, what it does is it has the, well, I will say two things. So number one, and now I'm guessing here because again
Yep.
I'm not I'm engaged in one mega constellation, uh, but we've not get into security stuff yet. My feeling, even though we are recommending that they look at it quickly, is that not a lot of people know about how to do this. But definitely, one of the vulnerabilities of a satellite is that the communication is open.
Hmm.
Like specifically, the signal is coming from that antenna, and everyone can see that antenna, right? It's not that it's underground
Hmm.
cables under the ocean, right? Like, and it's that satellite, right? Um, the good news, though, I feel, is that once you have a mega constellation and you have a lot of redundancy from that perspective, it might not be that easy to take down too many
Hmm.
satellites at once.
Understood.
And one of the probably this might not be cybersecurity, security in general, but probably one of the um, of a differentiating aspect of security in orbit. Now we have the Iran war, right? And I think I don't remember. I think Iran. I think there was something going into an Amazon data center, right? Something like that could be. These days, it went down for whatever reason. You cannot really. It is too risky to put down a satellite through how do you say kinetic energy,
Hmm.
because it affects everyone else. It's like the
Yeah.
Cold War, right? If I destroy a satellite, I don't just destroy it. I create a minefield
Yeah.
for
There's
every
so many up
satellite that
there.
is in orbit, right? So at least that's a little bit of a Cold War situation where if I go against the satellite, we all lose intelligence or data
Yeah.
access in orbit, right?
It's
So
kind of like mutually assured destruction, right? You hurt one, you're going
exactly,
to hurt a bunch of
exactly.
people.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
folks, I
That's the
believe
right
there's
term.
a website I have bookmarked that shows kind of where all the satellites are in the low Earth orbit and so forth. I forget the name of the site, but
Yeah, we know
I'll
them
put it
all.
in the description below. It's pretty cool to see just how
Yeah,
much stuff is up there.
we know them all. I know when I think I was still in the industry, China made a test of. I think they actually destroyed a satellite in orbit, and it was a big thing. Like, hey, are you crazy or what? Like, this is not good for anyone,
Yeah.
right? Because now you have all these projectiles staying. It's not like, oh, it exploded and that's it. No, you have all these micro projectiles now staying in orbit, and they're just running,
Yeah.
and you can control so much for maneuvering, right?
Yeah.
So at least the kinetic is safer. The jamming
Mhm.
might not be as safe,
Yeah.
I'd say.
So you're a fellow of an organization called INCOSE. Could you talk a little bit about what is or INCOSE as an organization and what is the goal and purpose of INCOSE?
Okay, so INCOSE is the Professional Society for Systems Engineering. So I don't know which ones you guys have in security, but it's the same as IEEE,
Hmm.
Informs, ASME, AIAA. It's the same thing for systems engineering. It
Dr.
was
Alejandro, if
founded.
you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. I got their website open so you could continue talking
Yes,
about them.
do that.
So I'm going to
Absolutely.
share and we'll go ahead and see where is my oh, entire screen share. And then
There
I
you go.
pull up INCOSE. Here we go. The
There
Trusted
you go.
Authority in
So
Systems Engineering.
right, so this is the new vision and strategy for INCOSE. So INCOSE was founded in the 90s, early 90s, I think. And it came because, again, it's, hey, we're doing this systems engineering thing, but all the knowledge is very scattered and we need a professional society.
Hmm.
And, and a few people from industry and academia got together and they founded it. And it was NCOSE, I think it was the National Council on Systems Engineering, and then a few years later, super quickly, I think it became the International Council on Systems Engineering.
Hmm.
So again, it's a professional society that is pretty active usually. So
Yeah,
you
there's a
get
lot of members here.
right. So like-minded people, maybe probably lots of work. So you can join working groups to advance the discipline, to learn more about it. I think in general, it's a super neat community, very collaborative community.
Hmm.
Um, Now, what they want, and in the past, until a couple of years ago, it was a very evangelizing society. It was very altruistic from the perspective that they would do a lot of things without recognition. So if you
Hmm.
get to the ISO standards in systems engineering, which are called ISO slash IEC slash IEEE standards, the main people behind the standards were INCOSE members, right? Producing, editing, uh, but INCOSE was not in the name. But it was good for INCOSE to do that because the main activity was promoting and say like, hey, we have this thing called systems engineering. Go right. So you see all those standards there.
Hmm.
They were led by INCOSE really, right? But
Yes.
INCOSE is not in there. And we have the systems engineering body of knowledge, which was done in collaboration with the CERC. And again, it's an open source material that everyone can use. So until a couple of years ago, a lot of the work was really advancing the discipline internally and evangelizing externally. Um, Now the world is changing, and the new vision for INCOSE is what you read there is to become the trusted authority, right? So
Hmm.
we want to be more recognized as the place to go when you want to do good systems engineering,
Yes.
right? And there are a number of strategic thrusts that they are engaging with. So yeah, I mean it's again the same as IEEE or AIAA. You become a member, you can join working groups. There are some working groups that are amazing in what they do. They have a certification program
Hmm.
also. So yeah, it's I think it's a good society to be. And even I would say there is a mix of long-term members that have done systems engineering for a long time, and then newcomers that have never done systems engineering in their lives, or they have done it without knowing they were doing it.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of those people coming and thinking like, oh, I thought I was alone in the world, and now I see all this community here,
Yeah.
and
It's
I can
wonderful
learn all these
when you
things.
fall right into the community and you find your home, right?
Exactly. Oh, really? Right. So you still see a lot of that. There is a lot of growth of new members every year that are coming into the society.
Well, it's a wonderful organization, and I discovered them summer of last year. So I actually got approached to for a program. I can't disclose it due to NDA and confidentiality reasons. But one of the things they use Cameo, and they preferred someone that had the SysML. I think they wanted the user level. But when I looked at I did a quick online course, and because of all my various expertise, I'll pull something up real quick to share with you. But I did this alignment alignment chart last summer because I was having some discussions explaining that, I looked at it real quickly and I said, yeah, I can see that it's evidence-based, and I can see that the model language building approach, it kind of fits and aligns to a lot of my experience and expertise. So I did this alignment chart. This is based on my own expertise. So the color coding here kind of shows like the NSA SC process right here. There's a systems engineering process. There's an information systems engineering process. There's the NASA's systems engineering, DAU systems engineering, and then there's other adjacent processes like CMM, RMF, Lean Six Sigma, PCDA, COBIT, cybersecurity framework, and then up here you have DevSecOps, DevOps, SAFe, Agile, MDSE,
Mhm.
ICD 503, and along the top, DODAF, TOGAF. I think MODAF is the new acronym. And then here I put the SysML, particularly in relation to diagram elements, and then MBSE next to it. So this is kind of the rough alignment chart that I did to kind of give people the perspective of where certain things align and my expertise is aligned. And what I was able to do is because I had that experience, and again, 35 years experience is a lot of experience. So I was able to translate that in, and I took a course because you got to learn, with any new process or framework, you got to learn the new jargon and the language because that's important. Because without the language, you're kind of lost of what to do when. But what I did was the first exam I did is OMG is the organization that offers the SysML certification. And so what I did was I went ahead and went right to the advanced, which is their, I guess, their level three. There's user, I think, intermediate and advanced. And I did about maybe 20 hours of training online, and I went and passed the advanced. But again, to caveat that for anyone watching, I do have 35 years experience and a lot of other engineering disciplines. But I was able to go past the advanced for SysML Advanced Model Builder. I'm number 73 in the world. But I knew that it wasn't the whole picture. Like it plugs into MBSE, but it's not really an MBSE focused credential. So this is what I discovered in COSE. And so in COSE is right 100% aligned to MBSE and those system engineering frameworks. And so I went ahead and took the exam. I haven't finished my application. I know you're a fellow, so you're going to definitely keep me on the right path there. So I did pass it in December at the end of last year. So I took the exam and I did pass it. I did it in about 31 minutes. And so I still have to finish and complete my application for the CSEP is the one that I think I'm going to pursue. But what I want to advocate to folks out there, if you've been doing systems engineering for at least three to 5 years or longer, look into INCOSE and look into their doctrine, look into their approach because it's going to make you a better systems engineer. And like I said earlier in this podcast, because of this evidence-based approach, it plugs in perfectly into like audits. It plugs in perfectly into things like risk management framework or any other security auditing system where you have to produce an artifact to prove that you're doing something or prove that something is a standard, meets a resiliency level or degree of resiliency. I think it's very, very important for that. So, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to share those things because I believe, I just discovered INCOSE, like I said, last July, and I discovered SysML, and I believe that this approach is definitely the future, and that's why I've reached out to Dr. Alejandro to have this discussion because, folks, even though it's not right in the middle of a cybersecurity lane, I believe it's a very strong, powerful lane because we hear about space technology, we hear about AI data centers in space, we hear about the satellites, but also about Space Force and the growth of Space Force. I believe they're relocating to the Huntsville area in the next few years. And obviously, people know that there's a lot of things in Huntsville that are related to NASA. NASA has facilities. There's a lot of growth in this sector, in the defense and space sector. And so, folks, if you are getting out of high school, you're finishing your college degree, and maybe AI is going to take over your job, and you need something to transition into, and you love using computers, and I tell you, this is something to definitely learn more about. So, with that being said, if someone's watching right now, Dr. Alejandro, what would be some sites, or besides Nkosi, but is there like a YouTube channel that you would say, hey, this is a colleague, or it might be your own YouTube channel, but is there like a resource that you would say, hey, anyone that wants to learn more about modern systems engineering, here are some resources, or maybe a website, a YouTube channel that you could recommend?
Honestly, what I always recommend is it's to buy books. Just get as many books as you can about systems engineering, and I'll tell you why. So, and actually, if you can take all books that they're no longer published, you can get them, from the 60s, the 70s, right? The early ones, and you can get them secondhand. They have a lot of wisdom, maybe more than the new books. Okay, so uh, because the way the discipline works is there is a lot of how you've practiced it, right? And this is where when you read one book in general, for most of them, you're just getting one way of going about this with one understanding and one set of experiences, which usually is very limited to one
Hmm.
context. Because those people that have written the books, they've not worked in 20 different projects, 20 different organizations, right? They've worked in two 10-year, two 20-year projects in one organization. So you take as many books as you can and you go through them, and then you start to identify patterns of things that are common and things that are explained differently. And then you start to reflect and say, like, okay, I see this are the two different things, and this guy also says it differently. And now, what is the common thread? Even if they live it differently, why is it so? It's because it really doesn't matter. It's because they are talking about something slightly different. So my recommendation first thing is go to the books, read them all, and more important than the standards. I would not go through standards or anything like that.
Hmm.
Just get to the books. Um, and read them. And once you're happy with that, I would go to papers from the INCOSE conferences, papers from the INCOSE journal. That's what I would do today. I'll try probably, um, even though we're talking about this MBSE, I'll try to read papers that have nothing to do with MBSE
Hmm.
first. So you want to have a really good understanding of systems engineering and then get through the MBSE papers.
Yes.
Then go through, oh, okay, so this is how you would do in a computer, and this
Hmm.
is how it fits in what I have learned in the past. I don't know of any blog or specific podcast or, well, I mean, there are interesting podcasts. So there is Sistemistas, but it's in Spanish mainly
Hmm.
now. Some are in English, some are in Spanish. There is the Vitec Corporation's or blog that is good. Maybe a few individuals make interesting LinkedIn posts, but usually LinkedIn posts are too shallow. Even
Yeah.
my own, maybe it's too shallow. Like they
Yeah.
try to give
It's
just
bite size.
yeah. So they okay. Like I'm trying to focus on this super high quick concept, right? Yeah. So I would simply say just go to the books. There are plenty. My favorite, honestly, it's the Applied Space Systems Engineering by Larson and other authors. That's probably, and you don't need to know about space, but
Yeah.
it uses space as a common thread of
Yeah.
application. But it's a really the reason why I recommend the Applied Space Systems Engineering book is that uh, it's I don't want to say the only one, but among the only ones that is written, it's edited and written by various authors. So, but it's edited in a way that you do not feel it is different authors in each chapter. You see, like
Okay.
sometimes edited books are like you invite authors, they write their chapters, and that's it. And then you can see here is different. They have the different authors, but they really work in the editing such that it reads as a single chapter, as a single book. And and what makes it different, probably there are two things. So, or the main thing that makes it different is because they took experts for each topic. You can see, and then four, I think five people, really big people in the domain, made the edit and effort. You do not see that bias or skewness that you see in most of the books on this particular experience of one author.
Hmm.
So you actually see a really good portrayal of this is what systems engineering is, really.
Wonderful. Well, if you could make
Um,
sure I get the link to that book, I'm going to save anyone watching
I will
the,
do
the
that.
Google search will have the link for it in the description.
I'll do
So,
that.
one of my favorite questions, I want to respect your time because we're coming up on our hour, but one of my favorite questions for all my guests is their day one story. So, a younger Alejandro, when you made the decision that, hey, I'm going to go all in into learning about modern systems engineering and being the best I could be and helping others, educate others in that same discipline, what was that story that you could share with us that day one?
So the day one probably, I think it's interesting. I mean, I know what my day one was really, but I had some day zero and day minus one that I thought were day ones.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna see those things and then I'll tell you what the actual day was. So you mentioned Apollo 13. That scene of the fixing
Yeah,
the circular with the square, that was it for me. I wanted to be an engineer, period, right?
I love it.
Um, and of course, life was never life as an engineer was nothing like that, but that was the thing. Like I didn't want to be an astronaut. I wanted to be on that table, pass working with that puzzle, right, of the thing. Um, and then I wanted to do satellites, right? And an interesting thing, and I started to work. I did electronics, and so I started doing electronics. And then in Europe, the understanding was that being a systems engineer was working on the satellite. You were the systems engineer of the satellite, and then you would be bringing or the mission, right? And you would be bringing the subsystems and plugging them together and all those things. So that's what I wanted to do. And my first day was really that Apollo thing of saying like, no, I want to do this satellite. Um, but then I was doing an executive master's program. It was part-time for working professionals. And Dinesh Verma, who was at the time the dean of the School of Systems and Enterprises at Stevens Institute, was the instructor for that course in the master's program. And then he taught systems engineering, and everything I thought about systems engineering, or everything I thought about what systems engineering was, it was destroyed. It's like,
Okay.
oh, this is it. Oh, I got it wrong. I thought, because to me, I thought systems engineering was about making sure that the thermal work with the electrical and work with something else. And that's how I would see it, right? Like, oh yeah, this unit works with this. And there is an aspect of that. I mean, don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. There is an aspect of that. But then Dinesh, he was teaching, and he's a phenomenal teacher. And he was talking about elicitation of the problem definition formally. Of course, I was doing requirements already in industry, but I didn't really understand problem definition. Then he's talking about that. And then he's talking about life cycle. And he's talking formally about, it's end to end, and it is these other things. And I know, and I had experiences already about those things, right? Like I had lived the situation of designing something that couldn't be manufactured.
Hmm.
Like I had experienced those cars already, but I did not have the understanding that that was related to systems engineering. I would only say, well, if I'm a really good designer, I'm thinking about that. So all those bits of knowledge, they were scattered, and he brought it together.
Hmm.
And to me, that's where I thought, oh, now I know what good point definition is. Now I understand what I have to do with requirements. Now I understand architecture. For
Yeah.
me, architecture was I have a power system and a computing system and all that, right? And then he talked about functional view and the physical view and allocating and the effects of allocation. And then you're thinking in the architecture life cycle wise and the total ownership cost. And gosh, that was the day. That
Well,
was the
it's
week.
lovely when
It was
someone
amazing.
turns the light on in your mind.
And it was like things that I had experienced and I knew and used clicked together. I finally thought, oh, systems engineering is not about satellite design. So that's when I started to make a difference between are you doing systems engineering or are you doing satellite design?
Hmm.
Because that was two different things. You can be a satellite engineer or you can be a systems engineer.
Yeah.
And then from there, life completely changed.
Well, thank you for sharing
I
your
think
day
for the
one.
better. Yeah.
Along your career and all the work that you've done to this point, which has been tremendous in industry, that's had to been great mentors, managers, bosses, directors, colleagues, or even other experts in industry you admired and looked up to. And I think you've already named a couple that was influential to opening up your mind to systems engineering. But does the goal of this question is to shine a light and pay homage to those names? It's kind of like the Oscar acceptance speech, where I know you're not going to be able to name all the great people that have had a positive impact in your career, but it's just an attempt to just pay homage to a few of those people that have been really tremendous impact on you in your career.
So I already mentioned Dinesh Verma for sure. Like he's so I would say there are probably I would say three people that stay on the top, right? So one of them is Dinesh, and because he shined the light of systems
Yes.
engineering, and he's been a mentor since that time, and he's always been super supportive of what I wanted to do and achieve. The second person group of people were Michiel Cruyff and Eric van der Heijden because they gave me my first job in space. They trusted me with a completely broken English. I did an interview in which I didn't understand anything, but I said yes to everything. And they really opened the door. And then the third person, and then the other equally is Bas Thelen. So he was a friend, colleague at Airbus. And I think he probably had the one thing that was very transformative because he helped me or he made me lose the engineering arrogance to a great extent. I'm not going to say that I'm free of it, but at least he really, toned it down significantly. And I remember precisely walking, we had lunch, I think, um, or yeah, I think we had lunch and we were walking back to the office, and he's talking to me about a problem of a project he was working on. And it was a problem on harmonization, a harmonization problem, a project in areas between different sites, right? And he was explaining to me the decisions that they made for this thing that they had to do. And I found it so stupid, right? So as an engineer, I say, oh, that's stupid, right? I mean, that's stupid. That's the worst decision ever. It's super stupid. And he's like, why did you say that? And then he started to talk to me about things beyond the technical nature of the artifact, right? And he starts to say, like, look, in this site, 20 years ago, they lost this project and they almost stayed without a job. So now they need to protect something. And then in that other company, this thing happens, right? And suddenly I started to think like, oh, yeah, it's not about what is the best technical stuff, but there, there are people things.
Hmm.
And those engineers are not only working based on what they think is technically better for the equipment, but it's their job safety as well.
Hmm.
And man, I mean, that to me, that was also kind of this starting process of saying, yeah, I'm too arrogant, right? Judging without understanding those other layers.
The whole context.
It's the whole context, right? And then that helped me transition. And I always say this, right? Like the typical engineer, the way we are is we discuss to be right.
Hmm.
It's really important who's right. That's all the discussion is about. Are you right or wrong? That's what we search, right?
Hmm.
And then thanks to Bas, as I was transitioning, I realized the secret ingredient for a systems engineer is to completely ignore. You don't want to be right. You want that things go your way.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. It doesn't matter how everyone else perceives it, right? It is your job to make sure that engineer feels they're right, but they're doing what you need them to do,
Yes.
right?
Great. I
And,
love
and,
that.
and moving from the I need to prove that I'm right to doesn't matter to me as long as we all go my way. That was a transformational, that was very transformational for me and my performance as a systems engineer.
Wonderful. It's wonderful to have these great people in our lives and careers that help us become who we
Absolutely.
are, right? So this is the moment of the podcast where I take a break from all the tech talk and kind of have
Mhm.
some fun. It's called my moment of levity. So I'm just going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. There's no right or
Okay.
wrong answers, just for fun. So right out the
Okay.
gate, is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Okay. Another food question, cake or pie?
Gosh. Okay. Wait a minute, because I didn't grow up in the US, and this is a difficult one.
Okay.
So cake is with the mushy thing, right?
Uh-huh.
And pie,
Is the
cake or pie
flatter with the
is the
crust?
flatter
Yeah.
with crust.
Like
I
an
would
apple
say cake.
pie.
Like an apple pie. Okay, I'm gonna go for cake.
Cake? What kind of cake?
Oh, what kind of cake? Oh yeah, I know which one. In Tucson, it is a tres leches
Tres
marble cake.
leches. Okay.
Tres
Hot or
leches
cold
marble
tres
cake.
leches cake?
It is. We have one in Tucson here that is unbelievable. La
So do you
Estrella,
prefer
it's
hot
called.
or cold tres leches cake?
It is. I would say ambient temperature is at its
Okay.
best.
All right.
Yeah,
Here's
room
the one that's
temperature.
going to split the room of IT people. So Star Wars or Star Trek?
None of them.
Ooh, none of that. I would figure as an engineer you would lean towards Star Trek, but
I
hey, that's
know. I'm not. Gosh, I'm more of a fantasy person
yeah,
than a
okay, that's
scientist.
respectable. What has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read? And what was the last book that you've read?
Okay, the most favorite one. I have to say Lord of the Rings before the movies came out. I have
Before
to
the
I have
movies?
to at the time, right? Lord of the Rings before the movies came out. The last book, the book I'm reading now, and this might sound weird, it's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
The Hitchhiker's Guide. That's another great one. Great, great classic.
And
Yeah.
I
You
was
mentioned
recommended
Lord of
it
the
20 years ago. I have
Uh-huh.
not read it yet.
Okay.
Then my birthday was a few weeks ago, and one of my students gifted to me as a present. And I thought, okay, I'm going to read it. So that's the one I'm reading right
Well,
now.
happy belated birthday. And to your Lord of the Rings thing, when you mentioned before the movies, there's a phenomenon. I don't know the exact name; it's slipping my mind. But when you first read a book, your imagination paints the picture of the characters, right? Based usually driven by the description from the book. And so the phenomenon is that once you've seen the movie, like Harry Potter or like Lord of the Rings, like I'll use Aragon as an example. Once you've seen the movie, it's Vigo now. For everybody, when we say, Aragon, most people, 10 out of 10 is going to think of the actor. Now the question goes, but can you remember what it looked like in your mind before you saw the movie? Can you visualize that character? And the phenomenon is you can't. Even people with really good recall, once they've seen a
Really?
movie, it supplants the vision that you originally
That's
created.
interesting. I
I forget
can.
the, yeah,
So for Aragorn, I mean, I don't know if I can visualize, but I know how the movie with Aragorn, that what pissed me. I remember the feeling of watching the movie in the theater and saying
uh-huh,
like, you got him so wrong.
yeah,
And like, no, that's not Aragorn. I
yeah.
like nothing to do
Even
with
though he
it.
had a great performance, great actor,
He's amazing.
but
He's a
not
really
like what
good.
the book
Exactly.
portrays.
I mean, I think if I would have not read the books, I would say he's phenomenal. And I
Yes.
think he does a phenomenal job. And I think he's a really good character. But in the book, it is a different character, right? So I'm
Yes.
not even talking about, sure, in the book, he's totally shaved. Okay, that's fine. I don't care about those things, right?
Yeah.
It's a different image. It gives. But then my son was reading the book this year, actually. And I was saying, like, hey, I'm going to reread it with you now because, you're reading, I'm reading in parallel. And I was reading, and I was like, you see, I was right. This is wrong. It's like, it's a different characters. That
Yeah.
that that is one of the characters that really,
Yeah.
when I watched the movie, ah,
Yeah, great
it didn't miss.
departure, but like I said, it's folks. If I do find out what that phenomenon is, I'll put the wiki link for it in the
Please
description
do
below.
that.
But
Do
it's
that.
a
Yeah,
unique
I didn't know
phenomenon
about that.
regarding movies and books. Moving on, and I want to respect your time because we just passed our hour, which we have so much that we could still talk about. So thank you so much for being generous with your time. So getting back to whatever links you have that you recommend, and even if there's online publications like INCOSE publications that you would recommend someone for that's a beginner going, hey, I like what this sounds like, but I want to kind of dip my toes in the water. I'll make sure any links that Dr. Alejandro sends me, we're going to put them in the description to save you guys that Google search. So the next question I have for you is, a lot of us are busy with our day jobs, and you're very busy with all the work you do, and also being a professor. And I'm sure. So the goal of this question is, what is coming up in 2026 for you? Are you going to be speaking in any conferences? Are you working on publications, whether a journal publication or a book? What's your milestones for 2026?
Okay, so milestones are exciting milestones, and I hope I can do them. So the first one, I'm becoming a NAS instructor for their internal training. So that's really good. First training is going to be end of April. So I'm actually right now working on preparing that. And I'm really excited. So it's going to be decision making, systems thinking for non-engineers. So that's good. So that's one milestone. The second one is my systems engineering book. So I have a contract with Wiley. I'm delayed. I'm very delayed, and I'm very sorry to my editor. But hey, I'm really pushing for it. But I hope that I can make a really good go in 2026 and get it out. That makes me super excited, but it's a daring task. It's not as writing a paper. And then the last thing is I've got a decision analysis book, very small one for engineers and technical managers that is not heavy, or I would say deep in concepts, but not heavy in machinery. And that one is written and it should come out anytime now. Hopefully
Okay.
before the summer. We're working on the, how do you say, like the proofing and the
Formatting.
design
Yeah.
book and the cover page and all those things. So those are the three milestones that I'm most excited about for
Wonderful.
2026.
Well, when you do get that systems engineering published, I would love to have you back on the podcast. So just reach out to me. I would love to talk about the book
Absolutely, I'd
and
love
and
that, Jim.
and yeah, I would love that. My final question, a lot of us professionals, we're really busy in our day jobs and we're busy with family life and everything, but we try to make time for causes, nonprofit, volunteer, and charity organizations that are doing positive, good work in the world. So the goal of this question is there a charity, nonprofit, volunteer organization that you want to shine a light on their mission and the good work that they're doing? It doesn't have to be engineering or tech related. Like for me, I donate every year to St. Jude's Cancer Research Hospital, Children's Cancer Research Hospital. But again, is there any organizations doing
Jim,
great
that's
work in the
that's
world?
the one. That's the one I was gonna say. That's the one I'm supporting.
Wonderful.
since I came to the US.
Well, folks, we'll have their links for their social media and their website if you want to donate either of your time, money, and energy. These are, again, great organizations that are just doing great work in the
Right.
world. This question was not on the agenda, so this was going to catch Dr. Alejandro a little off guard, but I know he's going to do fine. For all of my guests this season, I offer them what I call the last word. So, whatever you'd like to talk about, knowledge you'd like to impart, a quote, you can even talk about your favorite recipe or cuisine. It doesn't matter what you like to talk about because the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Uh, Gosh, okay. I'm gonna keep it semi-professional, right? I would say when I teach decision making and decision analysis, most of the things that I tell people is you control your own reality, right? So many of the things that we came up with when talking about fundamental needs or fundamental objectives, means objectives, is there is a lot of people that they're driven by what they think they have to do, not what gives them satisfaction or happiness or whatever. So a recommendation that I give personal and professional says write down how much time you spend every day on different things and then judge, is there a good balancing of your time? And it works wonder. It works wonders in industry when you realize, oh, I'm spending all my time in these problems, which might not be critical. Okay. And it works wonder also in your personal life when you say like, hey, I really love to do this, and I spend on this maybe 10 minutes a month. That's something not good. So, I think it's good to reflect on that. So that's the first thought that came to mind, Jim.
Well spoken, great insight, and thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being on the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Absolutely, Jim. It was a pleasure.